Well, let us join together in consciousness as we let go of this day and quiet our minds and come together in sacred communion. So, exhaling completely, I invite you to take a deep breath in and hold and release. Another deep breath in and hold and release. And as we come into this time together, I invite you just to let go of all the stressors of the day, the busyness of the day. Anything that has preoccupied your thinking. And just relax. Relax your body. And just come into a state of present awareness. An awareness that all is well. It is with this mindset that a shift occurs, that the hectic day-to-day becomes irrelevant. And in the now moment, there is perfect peace. I invite you to allow these words to just fill you. I am peace. Take that in. Feel the energy and vibration of the word peace. How it feels to think in your mind, I am peace. Regardless of circumstance, regardless of what's going on in the world, I am peace. I am love. I am love. And feeling the energy of that word as a uniting force, not as an emotion, but rather the truth of life, the connecting principle of oneness. I am love. Allowing that energy to just fill every aspect of your being, taking it in fully, acknowledging it for what it is, a connection with all of humanity. I am love. And in the stillness, in the quiet stillness, I experience peace. I experience love. My mind clears. Take a moment to just allow the words peace and love to fully permeate every aspect of your thoughts, every aspect of your beingness. feeling this vibration, its calming effect, and knowing that peace and love are ever present as I am, where I am, in the moment that I choose. And as we sit in this awareness, let's listen to the song, I Choose Love. Wow. And it is a choice to choose to be present with each other in a way that is honoring and accepting and allows us to really be present. So tonight, the topic is liberation or bondage. And I chose that because it seems like a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time, we feel like something's being done to us, like somehow life is really hard and it's getting harder. And no matter what I do, it just doesn't get better and I'm bound. And so I want to talk about the power of our words and how that is what actually creates the bond and also can liberate it. So when I think about bondage, I think about the moments when something happens that upsets me and I run the loop. Have you ever done that? You run that loop where, oh, this happened, that happened, they did this, they did that. Whoa, can you believe what they said, what they did? I'm feeling bad. All this terrible thing is happening to me. And so I'll run that around, right? It'll just run and run. It's on a loop. Or I'll think back to something that happened, a year ago, 20 years ago, 50 years, hey, 60 years ago. And I'll go, oh, my parents did this or that, or my neighbor did this or that. And here's how it's impacted me. And I run the loop and I run the loop. Or maybe I've had a really traumatic incident in my life. And maybe that trauma lasted an hour. And then for the next 10 years, I've run it again. That story, right? The bondage is created not so much by the event, but more importantly, by how we think about the event that occurred and the way in which we think about the event. So the bondage is, I look at this event that is in fact neutral, and I decide that it's bad or wrong, or I decide it's good and positive. However I decide, that then creates an energy around that. So if I've decided that the event was really bad and I've been harmed by it, and then I'm not ready to forgive, right? Because forgiveness is, cutting that chain that binds us, right? It's releasing me from that loop. Sometimes we're not ready to do that. We're in that place of justification. I've been there many a time. I'm justified in this. They did this to me. And so we live in that place. Now, the bondage is occurring because I keep thinking about, not the other person. They got nothing to do with this. But I keep thinking about the event. I've decided that the event is bad or wrong, and I have tied myself to it. I have bound myself up, and my entire being is controlled not by the event, because it's over. However, I am controlled by my thoughts about the event. So how do we liberate those thoughts? Well, forgiveness is one, and forgiveness is not about me saying another person can do something bad or wrong to me. It is about severing the tie between me and that experience. It's about going, you know what, a bad thing happened, and I'm not going to let it define the rest of my life. I'm going to choose to look at it and go, that's absolutely not okay. And I'm going to choose to begin to really honor and respect myself enough to tell myself a new story. So I had an experience when I was 11 years old. And it defined me for, I don't know, another 45 years or so, just a little time. I missed school one day because I was sick to my stomach. And my dad wrote me a note, because that's what you did in those days. You didn't phone the school or anything. You wrote a note and your child took it to school the next day. So I go to school the next day, but I forget to take the note with me. So I get to school, I tell my teacher, oh, I forgot it on the kitchen table. I'll bring it back after lunch. And she sends me down to the principal's office. And the principal rips me a new one because he says he called my dad, and my dad said he has no idea where I was, that I had not been homesick. So I am devastated. I was the type of kid for grades 1 to 6 anyway. I was the type of kid who sat absolutely mute. I would not say a word. I would not put my hand up to answer a question. I would not participate. I would sit there very, very quietly trying to be invisible. So being called to the principal's office was the most traumatic thing I think that had happened to me at that point. I go home at lunch, I get the note, I bring it back. The principal feels really bad. And I live with that betrayal for the next, I don't know, 50 years or so, 45 years. I don't know. It was a long time before I decided one day to reframe the memory. Okay. Because we do have a choice about whether we're bound to something or if we can free or liberate ourselves. And the way I liberated myself is I began to think about who my dad was, what he might have been thinking at the time. And one of the things about my dad is that he would jump to conclusions. He wouldn't necessarily listen to people very well. He would just assume what they were going to say next. And I think I do that sometimes too, Pierre, don't I? But he would do that. And so I'm thinking, what if the principal called him that morning and said, why was your daughter missing from school yesterday? But all he heard was, why is your daughter missing from school? And as a result of that, he goes, I don't know why she's not at school, right? That he just, so in reframing it in my mind, what it allowed me to do was to let it go. To actually go to a place of going, you know what? I don't think my dad deliberately did something to hurt me. I think he made an assumption, a mistaken assumption. And I got to live that experience as a result. Now, that took me a long time. I was probably in my late 50s before I finally had that reframe happen. But what happens with the idea of liberation or bondage is we liberate ourselves or we bind ourselves to something. We are the ones that have the power. It is our thinking about an event that ties us to it. It's not the event of itself. Events come and go. There's a lot of things that happen in our day-to-day life that don't even land on our radar. They just show up, they're gone, they're here, they're there. We don't really pay any attention to it. But the event that is really exciting and wonderful for us, we hang on to that one. The one that hurts us deeply, we hang on to that one, don't we? And that's our bondage. It's not that the event was good or bad. It's the way we've defined it in our own thinking. The power of our thoughts is so incredible that what we're thinking about is creating the anxiety that we feel. It's not really the event, it's the way we think about the event. Some people will look at it and go, whatever. Somebody else looks at it and goes, oh no, look what happened, right? How are we defining it? So liberation or bondage is simply the way I'm looking at something, the way I'm defining it. And you'll notice that whatever's happening for you might be different for somebody else. You know, we can all be in the same room at the same time, having the exact same event around us, and yet we will perceive it very differently because we are perceiving life from our own understanding of the world, our own understanding of ourselves, our own understanding of what's good and bad, how we view the world. That's how we show up in any given experience. So we could even take tonight, we're all here, we're having a conversation, we're listening to a message. We're going to take it or leave it. Some people might go, oh, I got something great out of that. Somebody else go, it was whatever. Who's right? Both. How I perceive of anything, how I perceive of the life journey, that's my perception from my history, from my journey, from the way I've lived my life. It's got nothing to do with anybody else. And so when we can begin to separate ourselves and come to an understanding that my misery is created by the loop that I've got running, not necessarily the event. The event may have been painful. I think Buddhists say, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And that's how I'm looking at this idea of liberation or bondage. It is, have I bound myself to something that's harming me greatly? Or am I liberating myself by going, wait a minute, let me think about it in a new way? That's the only thing that changed in my story between my father and I and what happened in grade 6. The minute I thought about it differently, it changed everything. I no longer had that feeling of, whoa, my dad betrayed me. That was gone instantly in the moment that it was reframed. I had a new understanding. I used to struggle with my relationship with my mom, and it was difficult when I was little, and I felt like she didn't love me, she didn't like me. And so there was this difficult relationship. And there was a point in time when I spent about a year where I never spoke to her. I decided, we lived in the same city, but I decided I needed that break. And then as I was doing work, becoming a minister, spending time trying to explore my own journey, my own self, what I realized was that my mom was raised in a certain way by a certain woman, and that she had her trauma and her pain. She was also married to a man who was kind of a rager, not necessarily the sweetest person. And so she was dealing with me from her own hurt. I don't think she had meant to cause me any harm. And I'm sure she loved me. And I couldn't receive it because of the way that I angered her. So when we look at any situation, the moment I took the mom label off and looked at Margaret, the woman, and then explored her life with her mom and her dad and her siblings, and began to look at what her journey had been with my father, it was like, oh, that changed it for me. In that moment, I was able to begin to think about her differently and our relationship differently. So I invite you to just look at the world that you currently live in, and look at the ways in which you judge yourself or others. Look at the experiences you've had in your life that you have brought forward into the now moment, and then explore whether or not it's time to lay down the hurt and to acknowledge that what happened happened, and today's a new day. Today, something new could happen. Today could be a new beginning. This could be a new opportunity. And allow yourself to free yourself from suffering. Pain is going to be there. It comes, it goes. It's a little bit like the ocean. It flows in, it flows out. It's here and there. It trips us up when it does. But suffering is when I hold on to something with a vengeance. I invite you to practice forgiveness, and forgiveness is, I give myself the freedom to let go. I give myself the freedom to be present where I am and to live life, to live it fully, to live it with excitement and delight, to live with a sense of, just real joy and bliss. I'm gonna, I'm gonna live for however many years. Let me live them to the fullest. And that can only happen if I allow my thinking to release the things that bind me. Make sense? Hopefully. All right. We are going to go into breakout rooms. And before we do that, we're going to review our intentions, how we're going to be with each other in that breakout room, just so that everybody gets an opportunity to share and to, just experience this. So you can read along with me. It's on the slide. I am creating a divine space of understanding, love, and compassion for each person to share their beliefs and perspectives in this experience. I'm speaking and acting for myself personally and not for others, and will share my truth honestly and respectfully. I am trusting that this is a safe place to step outside my comfort zone, or rather my familiar place. I'm keeping my opinions and advice to myself and will not crosstalk nor give advice or suggestions. And I'm keeping confidential what is shared here. I'm ensuring each participant has equal time to share. I am lightening up and I am joy. All right. And the questions that we'll be exploring tonight are on the thing right now. You might want to take a snap picture of it. I think Deja knows how to put it in the chat room, but when have you been feeling challenged, or when feeling challenged, do you blame others? We sometimes do that. Do you feel free to be who you are? What does liberation feel like? Have you experienced it? Do you believe you can experience liberation? Now I'm going to create the breakout rooms.